Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Understanding the Constitutional Law of India. Before we start to understand the constitutional law of India, it is important to note that there is a difference between these three terms which are often used interchangeably. First, the Constitution. Second, constitutional law. And lastly, constitutionalism. So let us quickly see what constitution means. The term constitution refers to a set of fundamental principles. So basically, every country runs on a set of fundamental principles, and this set is contained in the constitution of that country. Whether the constitution is written or unwritten does not matter, but obviously, a country governs itself through a set of fundamental principles which forms the constitution of a given country. Then, secondly, it is considered to be the supreme law of the country that establishes its framework. So, basically, the constitution develops and establishes the framework on which a country is going to function on. Lastly, it is the fundamental legal document of a nation. So basically, all the principles and the rules and the framework which a country follows, which is the basic fundamental principles of that country, is going to be contained in the constitution of that country. So that was constitution simply put. Now let us move ahead to the second term, which is constitutional law. So, the constitutional law is the study and practice of interpreting and applying the principles and rules outlined in the country's constitution. So, basically, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन से हम जब एक स्टेप आगे बढ़ते हैं और कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के दिए गए प्रिंसिपल्स को हम इंटरप्रेट और अप्लाई करते हैं बाय वर्च्यू ऑफ मे बी जुडिशियल प्रोनाउंसमेंट्स ऑफ द जुडिशरी, then that interpretation and application comes under constitutional law. It refers to the body of laws derived from the constitution. So everything which comes out of the constitution by virtue of application and interpretation will fall under constitutional law. It guides the interpretation and application of the Constitution as we have already discussed. Let us quickly see some examples. So, firstly, the doctrine of correlable legislation, or if you take any doctrine for that matter, doctrine of pith and substance, doctrine of eclipse, etc., all of these are application and interpretation of the Constitution. So, that will come under constitutional law. Second example is the judicial pronouncement in relation to inclusion of right to privacy under Article 21 of the Constitution. So as we all know, right to privacy का एक कोई भी express provision नहीं दिया गया है Constitution में. We have added it via virtue of a judicial pronouncement, that is the famous case of K.S. Puttaswamy versus Union of India. So these judicial pronouncement, which are basically a result of application and interpretation of the constitution, will fall under constitutional law. So that was the second term, and now let us quickly see the last term, that is constitutionalism. So the constitutionalism term basically is the broader concept that pertains to the principles and practices that emphasize the importance of a constitution in defining and limiting government powers. So basically, it is important that a government is following the rules and regulations of the constitution and acting in a very reasonable manner, right? It is not acting arbitrarily. It is important that the government follows the principles and the rules which are envisaged in the constitution. So constitutionalism basically emphasizes the importance of the constitution in limiting the government powers. So it prevents the abuse of power, right? So it promotes a government that operates within the framework of the constitution to prevent the abuse of power. So it is sort of limiting the powers of the government in order to prevent any arbitrary use of power. To take an example of constitutionalism, judicial review and separation of powers are two examples which are very relevant in terms of constitutionalism, because judicial review limits the powers of the legislature and executive by reviewing their actions, and separation of powers, again, it demarcates the boundaries in which a particular organ of the government is going to function. So that is why it is again limiting the powers of the organs of the government, right? So that was something which falls under constitutionalism. So this was the difference between the three terms: constitution, constitutional law, and constitutionalism. In the next lecture, we are going to start with the introduction to the Constitution of India, more specifically, the history behind the Constitution of India. So stay tuned. Thank you.